Okay, we are ready to begin. We're going to begin on page 2 of the supplements. In the supplement on page 2. Olam chesed yibana, yada da 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 da. Olam chesed yibana, yada da 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 da. Olam chesed yibana, yada da 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 da. Olam chesed yibana, yada da 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 da. I will build this world from love, yada da 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 da. And you must build this world from love, yada da 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 da. And if we build this world from love, yada da 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 da, then God will build this world from love, yada da 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 da. Olam chesed yibana, yada da 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 da. Olam chesed yibana, yada da 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 da. Olam chesed yibana, yada da 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 da. Olam chesed yibana, yada da 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 da. Shabbat Shalom. This is the week when we read about how the world was built. We celebrated Simchat Torah Wednesday night, and now our portion this week is Bereshit. It is back to the beginning, the start of creation and the building of the world. The Torah doesn't say that God built it from love, but our tradition understands this gift of our existence, of the world that we enjoy, as a gift of love for us. And so it's our responsibility as God's partners in creation to reciprocate, to fill this world with love, to build up the love in the world. And Shabbat, I think, helps us to do that by getting us out of the stress, out of the tension, out of the worry of the rest of the week, so that we can focus on the relationships and the reflection that give our lives the greatest meaning. So let's continue by lighting the Shabbat candles. Ruthie, on page 301 is where we find the blessing. Read first. Read first. Thank you, Ruthie. And now we are ready to welcome the Shabbat angels of peace and joy on page 13. Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharei, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One of the quirks of the story of creation is that creation begins, as we know, with God saying, "Let there be light," and there was light. Right. Except the strange thing is that the sun and the moon and the stars aren't created until the fourth day. So on the first day, there's light without the heavenly bodies that we think of as giving us light. So we understand, our tradition understands this light to be a divine light, a light from God, a light of God. And if we turn to page 17, in Psalm 97, at the end of the psalm, there is a reference to light being stored for the righteous, joy for the honorable, that this divine light of the beginning of creation is stored away, hidden, until the time to reward those who are righteous, that they will be able to enjoy this original divine light, and it will bring honor to them and joy to those who are honorable. So the second line from the bottom of the Hebrew, Or Zarua Latzadik. Or Zarua Latzadik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua Latzadik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua Latzadik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua Latzadik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Lai 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 lai. Or Zarua Latzadik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua Latzadik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua Latzadik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua Latzadik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Lai 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 lai. I learned that song with clapping there also, but it's hard to do that while I'm playing the guitar, so thank you for filling it in. Exactly. On page 21, we are ready to welcome the Shabbat bride. Lecha Dodi, come my beloved, to greet the bride. Lecha Dodi lihikrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmiyanu el hamyuchad, Adonai echad, Ushemo echad, L'shem u'tiferet v'litila. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela, likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki hi makor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshavat tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, kiva orech kumi ori, uri, shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'v'tzola, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Can be seated. And let's turn to page 311. Keep a finger here on page 27, but let's turn to page 311. For the blessings which you lavish upon us in forest and sea, in mountain and meadow, in rain and sun, we thank you. For the blessings you implant within us, joy and peace, meditation and laughter, we are grateful to you. For the blessings of friendship and love, of family and community, for the blessings we ask of you and those we cannot ask, for the blessings you bestow upon us openly and those you give us in secret. For all these blessings, Creator of the universe, we thank you and are grateful to you. For the blessings we recognize and those we fail to recognize, for the blessings of our tradition and the joy of this holy Shabbat, for the blessings of return and forgiveness, of memory, of vision, and of hope, for all these blessings which surround us on every side. Dear God, hear our thanks and accept our gratitude. We rise as we turn back to page 27, Chatzi Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Bagala, uv'izman kariv, v'imru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach, Le'alam U'La'amei Amaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yit'aleh, V'yithalal, Shmei Dekudesha Barichu, Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma, v'imru, amen. Page 28. Baruchu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. Can be seated. And let's turn in the supplements to page 6. At the end of the 6 days of creation, after God has made everything, God takes a look at the whole of creation and says, this is very good. And there's evening and there's morning, a 6th day. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, vehine tov me'od. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, vehine tov me'od. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, vehine tov me'od. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, vehine tov me'od. There was evening, there was morning, there was evening, there was morning, there was evening, there was morning, there was evening, there was morning. Vahi erev, vahi voker, tov me'od. Vahi erev, vahi voker, tov me'od. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, vehine tov me'od. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, vehine tov me'od. There was evening, there was morning, there was evening, there was morning. Vahi erev, vahi voker, tov me'od. Vahi erev, vahi voker, tov me'od. Let's leave a finger on page 30 of the Siddur and turn to page 375. Even though this reading on page 375 is titled Simchat Torah, it works for right after Simchat Torah as well. Page 375. We have finished the Torah now, reading of the last days of our teacher Moses, and we have begun at the beginning once more. Before creating Adam and Eve, God created time, evening and morning. God created plants and birds, animals and the creatures of the sea, each with its beginning, its flowering and its ending, its rhythm of death and of birth. Together, inspire us, our Creator, to continue the cycle of Torah. Strengthen us to renew the life of Israel. Help us bring your light to our world. Speed us toward the bright morning of peace. Page 30. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha vaderech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. Page 31 in the 6th line from the top. Leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. Page 32, our song of liberation and celebration of our freedom, Mi Chamocha. Yai lai lai la lai la lai lai la la lai. Yai lai 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 ya la lai 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 lai. Ya lai la lai lai yai lai ya la lai. Yai la lai lai ya la lai lai lai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. Malchutecha ra'u vanecha. Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe. Ze eli anu ve'amru. Ze eli anu ve'amru. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. On page 34, the 6 days of creation culminate in the 7th day, Shabbat. And so we celebrate Shabbat with Vishamru. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אות היא לעולם, אות היא לעולם, אות היא לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. We keep a finger on page 35B, but first we turn to page 370. Page 370. Out of a vast and formless mass, you, O God, did fashion a world. You created us in your own image, giving us dominion over all your works. You who have given us Shabbat to remember creation, implant within us a spark of your spirit. May we also bring light where there is darkness, ennobling thus the human heart and mind. You delivered Israel from bondage in Egypt, for it is your will that we should be free. Help us to break every shackle asunder, hastening the day when the strong will be just and the weak will no longer know fear. You commanded us to cease from our labor, that we may find joy and peace in Shabbat rest. We thank you, our Creator, for the gift of Shabbat, your gift to Israel that blesses all humankind. And now back on page 35B, we are ready for the Amidah. Please rise. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, ve'Koneh HaKol, ve'Zocher Chasdei Avot, Umevi Goel Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Ufoked Umoshia Umagen. Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah. Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye Metim Atah Rav Lehoshia. Mashiv Haruach Umorid Hagashem. Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed. Mechaye Metim Berachamim Rabim. Somech Noflim Berofeh Cholim. Umatir Asurim. Umekayem Emunato. Lishenei Afar. Michamocha Bal Gevurot. Umido Melach. Melech Memit Umechayeh. Umatzmiach Yeshua. V'ne'eman Atah l'hachayot metim. Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayeh hametim. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh. U'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalu chasela. Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Please be seated. So we continue on page 36. We don't usually do this, but this is the week to do it. Let's continue together in English with the first two paragraphs on page 36. You sanctified the seventh day, the pinnacle of the creation of heaven and earth, to enhance your name. You blessed it above all other days, sanctifying it above all other times. Thus it is written in your Torah, the heavens and the earth and all they contain were completed. On the seventh day, God finished the work God had been doing and ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and called it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation. We continue with our own private Amidah through page 38 if you wish to continue in the Siddur or in our own hearts and souls. Oseh shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Oseh Shalom bimromav. Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru, imru, amen. We turn our thoughts now to our loved ones and friends who are ill, those who are struggling physically or spiritually or emotionally. Tonight in our congregational family, we think particularly of Rick Albertini, Phyllis Burke, Arthur Campbell, Phyllis Dillon, Valerie Frank, Jennifer Galvin, David Glazer, Carolyn Halunin, Lily Krentzman, Cheryl Leahy, Gary Levine, Nancy Mayer, Paul Newfield, Sarah Newfield, Mark Panasuk, Tracy Paveo, Gail Rosenberg, Cindy Sherman, John Terrell, Yonina bat David HaKohen V'Sara, Esther bat Chaim V'Goldi, Rella bat Moshe Haskell Ufega Leah, Fegi bat Shlomo Nisan Halevi, and Gittel bat David. If there's someone for whom you are particularly concerned tonight, whose name you'd like to say aloud, I invite you to do so now. We hold all of our friends and loved ones in our hearts as we turn to the inside back cover of this Siddur and join in our prayer for healing, Mishaberach. Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha le'imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Let's turn to page 148. And on page 148, let's join in the prayer for our country. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your Spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony to banish hatred and bigotry and to safeguard the ideals and free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country. May this land, under your providence, be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen. On our song sheets, we find the prayer for Israel, a prayer for Israel. From Psalm 122, Tfilah Yisrael, from Psalm 122, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Shalu Shalom, Yerushalayim, Yishlayu, Ohavayich. Shalu Shalom, Yerushalayim, Yishlayu, Yehi Shalom Bechelech Shalva Be'armenotayich Leman Achai V'Re'ai Adabrana Shalom Bach Shalu Shalom Yerushalayim Yishlayu Ohavayich Shalu Shalom Yerushalayim Yishlayu Ohavayich Leman Beit Adonai Eloheinu Avakshato Lach Leman Beit Adonai Eloheinu Avakshato Lach Shalu Shalom Yerushalayim Yishlayu Ohavayich Shalu Shalom Yerushalayim Yishlayu Ohavayich Ohavayich Today is day 386. Since October 7th, it has been 55 weeks and 1 day since the Hamas attack on Israel that the 101 remaining hostages in Gaza have still been in captivity. We continue to keep them in our hearts, in our thoughts, and our prayers as we join in the prayer at the bottom of the page for captive Israelis. Our God, the one who raised Joseph up from the pit, be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. Send complete rescue and full redemption to those held captive by the enemy. Strengthen their spirit and bring them our prayers, that they be protected from all harm. Implant understanding in the heart of the enemy, that they may return the captives in wholeness of body and spirit. Grant wisdom to the Israel Defense Forces, that they may secure freedom for the captives without loss of life. Grant strength of spirit and courage of heart to all the sons and daughters of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar to release bonds of captivity and allow us all to live in freedom. They shall call upon me, and I will answer them. I will be with them in distress. I will rescue them and honor them. In the Siddur, we turn back to page 150 because in addition to being the start of a new Torah reading cycle, we are also at the start of a new month in the Jewish calendar. A new month begins this coming week, and so there's a special blessing that we say to welcome the new month on page 150. Let's join together in the English. May it be your will, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, to reawaken in us joy and blessing in the month ahead. Grant us a long life, a peaceful life with goodness and blessing, sustenance and physical vitality, a life of reverence and piety, a life free from shame and reproach, a life of abundance and honor, a reverent life guided by the love of Torah, a life in which our worthy aspirations will be fulfilled. Amen. May God, who wrought miracles for our ancestors, redeeming them from slavery to freedom, redeem us soon, and gather our dispersed from the four corners of the earth in the fellowship of the entire people Israel. And let us say, Amen. Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, Yihiyeh B'yom Shabbat, Haba Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael L'Tova. The new month of Cheshvan will begin next Friday night. May it hold blessing for us and for all the people Israel. Yechadshehu HaKadosh Baruch Hu Aleinu V'al Kol Amo Beit Yisrael L'chaim u'L'shalom L'sason u'L'simcha L'shua u'L'nechama V'nomar. Together in English, may the Holy One bless this new month for us and for all God's people, the house of Israel, with life and peace, joy and gladness, deliverance and consolation. And let us say, Amen. Back on page 51, we rise for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gdula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu k'goyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Noteh Shamayim V'Yosed Aretz U'Moshav Yekaro B'Shamayim Mimal U'Shchinatu Zo Begovhei Meromim Hu Eloheinu Ein Od Emet Malkeinu Efes Ulato Kakatuv B'Torato V'yadata hayom V'hashevota El Levavecha Ki Adonai Hu HaElohim B'Shamayim Mimal V'al Haaretz Mitachat ein od, v'nemar, v'haya Adonai, lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, ushemo echad. May be seated. As I mentioned earlier, Wednesday evening we began our celebration of Simchat Torah, rejoicing in the Torah as we come to the conclusion of a cycle of the Torah reading. We read the end and then start over again at the beginning, looking for new insights, new guidance, new meaning in the new year. But that description obscures one small fact, and that is that if someone wants to understand how to live a Jewish life, how to keep our covenant with God, how to follow the mitzvot, the Torah is not really so helpful. As good a book as it is, and there's a reason it's sometimes referred to as the good book, it's not so good as a practical guide to Jewish life. Primarily, that's because it lacks two characteristics of good guides. It's not well organized, and it's not very specific. Let's take Shabbat as an example. If someone wants to learn how to mark Shabbat as a Jewish person, it would be hard to do that using the Torah. The Torah is organized more or less chronologically or in order or narratively. It follows the flow of the story. It's not organized by topic. So to learn what the Torah says about Shabbat, we can't just flip to the section about Shabbat. There is no section about Shabbat. Instead, references to Shabbat appear scattered throughout the whole Torah in many different parts, as early as the creation story and as late as the middle of Deuteronomy. To find them all, you have to read through the whole thing, not the most efficient system. And even finding all of those references would not be that helpful, because we don't get a lot of details about how to mark Shabbat. We're told to rest, we're told not to work, but we're not told what counts as work or what rest means. We understand the principle, but not the specifics of how to live it out. So from the perspective of Jewish practice, the Torah and the Tanakh, the entire Hebrew Bible, as a whole, is really just the beginning. Since the destruction of the ancient temple in Jerusalem by the Romans in the year 70, the Jewish legal tradition has developed dramatically to make it more usable. Over the following 2 centuries after that destruction, the scholars of that time, who would come to be called rabbis, developed a legal code called the Mishnah. The simplest way to describe the Mishnah would be to say that the rabbis extracted the laws from the Torah, organized them by topic, and fleshed out some of the details. In the Mishnah, there is a section entitled Shabbat, where we can look up all the laws about Shabbat. And the very first one tries to define what work means by identifying 39 categories of labor that went into building the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary the Torah tells us that the Israelites carried through the wilderness and whose construction was supposed to be stopped on Shabbat. Therefore, those categories of work are prohibited for us on Shabbat. So the Mishnah is much more usable for understanding the practice of Judaism. Except for one thing. A legal code does not always describe how the laws are actually applied. How do they work in practice and not just on the page? Are there exceptions or regional variations? What if 2 of the laws conflict with each other? Say, the Shabbat prohibition on excessive travel and the mandate to save a life. What if saving a life on Shabbat requires travel to a hospital? Which law takes precedence? It's not spelled out in the legal code, but the answer is, of course, that saving a life comes first. but it has to be discussed and debated. That discussion is called the Gemara. And together, the Mishnah and the Gemara, the laws and the discussion, make up what is called the Talmud. But now the problem is that once the Gemara starts discussing the laws, the Mishnah's neat system of organization breaks down, because the conversations of the Talmud can flow in a stream of consciousness way. Discussions of Shabbat are no longer limited to the section on Shabbat. And the section on Shabbat is no longer limited to talking about Shabbat. In fact, that's where we find the discussion about Hanukkah, among many other topics. My point is that the Talmud, like the Torah before it, is now very difficult to use. So once again, scholars extract the laws from the Talmud, organize them by topic, and flesh them out, writing a new legal code. But guess what happens? The code needs some discussion, and the conflicts need to be resolved, and the laws need to be applied to new situations, and the legal corpus expands again until scholars create a new code. This kind of growth and refinement continues cyclically through the centuries, creating what is called halakha. Halakha comes from the Hebrew word meaning to walk, and it refers to how one walks through the world as a Jew. Halakha is how we live a Jewish life, and it is made up of these laws, discussions, and decisions that have extended over the centuries. And because our world is not static, halakha is a dynamic, ever-evolving process. And consequently, it is also enormous. The amount of halakhic literature is overwhelming for most people. To illustrate one small slice, the next time you're in the multipurpose room, look at the bookshelf by the door on the far wall. The majority of that entire bookshelf holds one edition of the Talmud with some commentary. Most people do not have the time or the ability to master all of this corpus of halachic literature, which brings us back to our original issue. If halakha is so vast, how can an ordinary person make decisions about how to live a Jewish life? So there develops another category of Jewish legal literature called responsa. It sounds like the word response because that's what it is. A person or a community with a Jewish legal question would send that question to a great scholar, someone who had mastered the tradition, and that person would consult the relevant texts, consider contemporary circumstances, and then write a responsum, providing both the answer to the question and their reasoning for how they got there. Sometimes responsa are written by individuals, sometimes they're written by committees. The responsa process continues today, trying to address the issues of contemporary 21st century life. The Reform movement has a responsa committee that addresses modern questions by Reform Jews or congregations even now. But that's not what I want to talk about tonight. My main topic is this. This week, as we were preparing to read about the death of Moses, the Reform movement and the Jewish world as a whole lost a giant. Rabbi Dr. Walter Jacob died this past Sunday at the age of 94. Rabbi Jacob led Rodef Shalom congregation in Pittsburgh since his ordination in 1955. He served as the president of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, the rabbinical organization of Reform Judaism, from 1991 to 1993 when I was in rabbinical school. And most importantly for our purposes tonight, in the words of his death notice from the CCAR, quote, Rabbi Jacob was his generation's preeminent scholar of halakha, the Jewish legal tradition. As chair of the CCAR Responsa Committee over the course of several decades, and later as the founder of the Solomon B. Friedhof Institute of Progressive Halakha, Rabbi Jacob served as a critical bridge between the halachic world and the Reformed Jewish community. He authored hundreds of responsa, many of which continue to guide Reformed Jewish practice today. He raised up disciples and worked collaboratively with members of the committee he chaired, seeking broad input and striving to bring each member's view into the final product, unquote. This book, Questions and Reformed Jewish Answers, was the first new book of Reform response that's come out during my years as a rabbinical student, and you can't see it from where you're sitting, but it is by Walter Jacob. He literally wrote the book on halakha, on these halachot. So, in Rabbi Jacob's honor, I wanted to study briefly, one responsum from this book. And since we have been focused tonight on creation and Shabbat as the culmination of creation, I picked a responsum related to Shabbat. It answers a question that is so obvious. What? Sure. Thank you. Mike's coming to help too? All right. Yeah. All right. Oh, all right. Okay. So the responsum that we're going to look at answers a question about a topic that is so obvious that most people don't even notice it or think of it as a question, and that is, as we'll see, why do we light 2 candles on Shabbat? And the reason it's an interesting question, or one of the reasons it's an interesting question, is that the blessing that we say when we light, the blessing that Ruthie sang for us, uses the phrase, lahadlik ner shel Shabbat, to light the candle of Shabbat, or the lamp of Shabbat. The word ner, which means light, is singular. God commands us to kindle the Shabbat light. Why do we kindle Shabbat lights? So now that we've got these pages, we're going to start on this side by looking at the sources, the helpful sources that Rabbi Jacob is going to refer to. This is not the responsum yet. We'll get there. But in order to understand the responsum better, it's helpful to have a first look at the sources that he's going to be referring to. So the first text comes from the Mishnah, which you remember is the first code of the laws from the Torah. It's from the section about Shabbat. You see that it says at the top, Mishnah Shabbat, chapter 2, number 1. And it clarifies what we are not allowed to use for lighting. So it says, with what may one light the Shabbat lamp, and with what may one not light it? With regard to types of prohibited wicks, one may light neither with cedar bast, nor uncombed flax, nor raw silk, nor willow bast, nor desert weed, nor green moss that is on the surface of the water. With regard to types of prohibited oils, one may light neither with pitch, nor wax, nor castor oil, nor burnt oil, nor fat from a sheep's tail, nor tallow. Nahum the Mede says, one may light with boiled tallow. And the rabbis say, both tallow that was boiled and tallow that was not boiled, one may not light with them. So to back up a step, this text illustrates something that I mentioned earlier, which is that it attempts to specify the details around a commandment. In other words, given that there is a commandment to kindle a light on Shabbat, the next reasonable question would be, what should I light? Or what shouldn't I light? To what shouldn't I burn to make this light? So obviously this comes from a time before the mass production of candles. The word wax that's translated here presumably means something different from the wax that we use. It comes from a time when people might want to kindle a light for Shabbat with whatever they have on hand, whatever they possess they could use to light, they might want to use it. So we see that there are some limitations on what can be used. We're not going to go into why these specific wicks or oils are prohibited. That's later in the Mishnah and not so important for our purposes today. But given that kindling light is an important part of Shabbat, this section helps to channel that impulse in appropriate directions by telling us how not to do it. Okay? Any questions on the first text? Yeah, I'm not enough of a of a textile expert to know the specifics of all these. And in fact, there's actually a lot of debate about what a lot of these topics are, well, excuse me, a lot of these words actually mean. So when I said that wax presumably isn't the kind of wax we have today, that's not just me making excuses for the text. That's that wax is their best guess at what the word that they're describing here actually means. Okay. It's similar in a way to, we know that the land of Israel is called the land of milk and honey, but the honey that they're referring to is not bee honey. It's it's date honey. It's like crushed dates, like that. So the word, even though it means something in our language today, it's not what we think of it as referring to back then. Okay, so that's the first text that he's going to refer to for us. Let's look at the second text, which comes from the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch is a legal code written in the 16th century in Tzfat in Israel. In general, the Shulchan Aruch reflects the practices of a Sephardi community from more Western Europe, as opposed to the Ashkenazi community from Eastern Europe. Okay? So this text is going to get a little more specifically to the matter at hand. It says this: one should take care to make a beautiful lamp. There are those who place 2 wicks in this lamp, one light recalling remember, and the other observe. So we're going to stop there for the moment. Notice that when the text refers to making a beautiful lamp, it is talking about a lamp, right? One lamp in the singular. Again, the Hebrew uses the word ner, which is in the singular. That's the commandment, to make a lamp. However, you notice it then says, there are those who do this, right? Even though the commandment is one lamp, some people put 2 wicks in it and essentially make 2 lamps out of the one. Okay? Why do they do that? Because the 10 commandments tell us to mark Shabbat, but the 10 commandments are actually given twice in the Torah. Once in real time in Exodus, when the Israelites are standing at Mount Sinai, and once in Deuteronomy, when the Israelites are about to go into the Promised Land, and Moses is reminding them of when they had been at Mount Sinai. And the issue is that the verb for what we should do to mark Shabbat in the 10 Commandments is different in those 2 places. In Exodus, we are told, Zachor, remember Shabbat, and in Deuteronomy, we are told, Shamor, observe Shabbat. Jewish tradition reconciles this discrepancy by saying that God said both words at the same time, because God's God. God can do those things. And in fact, when we sing Lecha Dodi, we sing Shamor v'Zachor b'dibur echad, Shamor and Zachor in one utterance. Okay? Shamor and Zachor at the same time. We are supposed to do both remember Shabbat and observe Shabbat. So lighting 2 wicks reminds us of both Zachor and Shamor. Okay? But now there's a commentary, and that's the italicized part down below. The commentary is by Ramah. Ramah is an acronym for an Ashkenazi commentator on the Shulchan Aruch. So the Shulchan Aruch itself is primarily Sephardi. Ramah, the commentator, is Ashkenazi. And he brings the perspective and practice of his community. He says, one may add and light 3 or 4 candles, and such is our custom. All right? So not only can 2 lights be kindled for Zachor and Shamor, but even more can be added. Any questions? All right, moving right along. One more text from the next paragraph of the Shulchan Aruch. Both men and women must have in their houses a lit lamp on Shabbat. Even if they do not have food to eat, they must beg and take oil and light the lamp because of the principle of delighting in Shabbat. Okay, this text illustrates the importance of kindling light on Shabbat. It is for delighting in Shabbat, which in Hebrew is oneg Shabbat, which does not mean cookies and brownies. It means delight, which does mean cookies and brownies, but that's how we get delight. But the Shulchan Aruch's point is that delight means delight and not dark. Thank you very much. We enjoy even more when there is light. Steve, you're just sad you didn't make that joke, I think. But, all right. So we need to make light for Shabbat. So light even takes precedence over the food. Okay? Even if there's not enough food, you have to go get enough for the light. However, notice that here we have returned to the singular for light, a lit lamp. Okay? We only need to spend our meager funds on one light if we can't afford more. And that in turn suggests that those who do light more than one light are more well off than those who only light one. Okay. Any questions about this? All right. Now we are ready to look at the responsum itself. And although we looked at the texts first, so what Rabbi Jacob wrote would make sense, I just want you to notice as we go how he reviews the relevant legal writing, bringing in the precedents and then synthesizing them to draw his conclusion. So the responsum itself is on the back, and we see at the top of the page is the question from Aaron Cohen of Louisville, Kentucky. Did you know there were Cohens in Louisville, Kentucky? All right. Aaron Cohen in Louisville, Kentucky writes, "Why do we kindle two lights on Friday evening?" And Rabbi Jacob answers like this. The origin of the Shabbat lamp goes back to the Mishnah in the section that we read. There and in the appropriate sections of the Talmud, we see that only one Shabbat light was mentioned. The discussions dealt with the nature of the fuel for the single light, whether it could be tallow or various kinds of oil. Further discussions, which we didn't read, dealt with moving the lamp as well as extinguishing the light. In none of these places, as well as the later Talmudic discussion, was a second light for Erev Shabbat mentioned. The first source of our custom seems to be Jacob ben Asher. Jacob ben Asher wrote a legal code that is the basis for the Shulchan Aruch. A couple centuries earlier than Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch is built on the structure of what Rabbi Jacob ben Asher wrote. He wrote that it was customary to kindle a beautifully prepared light, and that among some, two lights were kindled, reminiscent of the two versions of the Shabbat commandment in the Decalogue with the words Shamor and Zachor. This custom was limited to the wealthy, as the next sentences dealt with individuals who could not afford both Shabbat and Hanukkah lights, or who did not have sufficient money for both the light and the wine for Kiddush. That's along the lines of the last section that we read. Another minhag, another custom, which arose during more prosperous times, called for kindling lights or candles for every member of the family or for each child in the family. And in fact, this is a practice that my mom adopted a number of years ago, to light candles for all of us in the family. For this reason, we find some older Shabbat lamps with a large number of arms, 5, 7, or 8, are fairly common. We can see that it has become a general custom. I should say about that explanation of having light for every family member or child is new to us, but it's a nice explanation of why one might add lights, right? The Ramaz addition of you can light 3 or 4, even more, that's a nice explanation for why one might want to do such a thing. We can see that so here's his conclusion. We can see that it has become a general custom to have two lights in order to usher in the Shabbat. However, one would certainly be acceptable, and any larger number presents the continuation of a fine minhag. Okay, so what I wanted you to see here was how, by reviewing the relevant precedents, the relevant legal writings, he takes us from the commandment to light one lamp, to the development of the custom to kindle two lights, to how that expansion was primarily for the well-off, to the even greater expansion by the more prosperous. Nevertheless, although our custom is to light 2 candles, 1 is totally fine, more than 2, lovely as well. Any questions? Okay. So that answers Aaron Cohen's question of how we get to 2 lights and why it's not necessarily mandated that it's 2 and only 2, or even as many as 2. Wanted to give you a flavor of responsa and a flavor of Rabbi Jacob. Just as we moved Wednesday night from Moses' death back to the creation of the universe, so did I want to move tonight from Rabbi Jacob's death to the world of Reformed Jewish practice that he created, helping us to decide how to live as modern Reformed Jews. When we study the words of our teachers and when we remember the lessons that our own loved ones taught with their lives, we keep their lights burning even after their deaths. So as we prepare for Kaddish, in addition to Rabbi Jacob, tonight our congregation remembers with special affection our loved ones whose Yahrzeit will occur this coming week. Rita Harvey, mother of Merrill Levinson; Samuel Handel, grandfather of Ruth Albert; Stan Siegel, friend of Amy Glazer; Max Peltz, father of Mel Peltz; Tom Grunin, father of Barry Grunin; Elizabeth Lieberman, grandmother of Paul Kaufman. If you are remembering someone tonight, we invite you to say their name aloud now. Zichronam livracha. May the memories of all our dear ones be a blessing. We also remember all those killed on and since October 7th as a result of the Hamas attack on Israel. If you are saying Kaddish in someone's memory tonight, we ask you to rise now. In loving support of the mourners, we rise as a congregation. In gratitude to God for the gift of the lives of their loved ones, those who are in mourning and those remembering someone, say Kaddish on page 52. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shmei rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayeichon u'v'yomeichon, u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'izman kariv imru amen, yehei shmei rabbah mevarach l'olam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudsha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran ba'alma v'imru amen, yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to those who mourn and comfort all of the bereaved. And we say, Amen. Please be seated. Rhonda, if you're up for announcements. Shabbat shalom.
Torah study tomorrow at 9 with Rabbi Todd in person with bagels and coffee and remote. Tomorrow Havdalah service at 7 p.m. on Zoom. Throughout the year, family table meets our hut. 30 cans of tuna and 30 cans of vegetarian soup. If you would like to donate money to family table monthly instead of bringing food, there is a link in the email. Please remember to check these and read the emails. You can call PCS office if you have any questions.
Shabbat shalom. That was hardly worth the energy it took you to walk up to the bima. You can tell it's the end of Tishrei because the calendar has all of a sudden gotten much lighter. All right, our final song tonight is on page 54, Adon Olam. And just aside from us usually most often closing with Adon Olam, it's particularly appropriate this week. Take a look at the translation on page 54. Before creation shaped the world, God eternal reigned alone, but only with creation done, because God as sovereign be known. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra le'et nasa v'chefzo kol azai melech shemo nikra Adon Olam v'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora Adon Olam v'hu haya v'hu hoveh v'hu yeh b'tifara Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa, V'chefto Kol, Azai Malach Shemon Ikra Adon Olam, V'hu Echad, V'ein Sheni, Lahamshilo Lahachbira Adon Olam, B'li Reshit, B'li Tachlit, V'lo Ha'oz V'ha'misra Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa, V'chefto Kol, Azai Malach Shemon Ikra Adon Olam, V'hu Eli, V'chai Goali, V'tzor Chavli B'etzara Adon Olam, V'hu Nisi, Umanos Li, Menat Kosi B'yom Ekra Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa, V'chefto Kol, Azai Malach Shemon Ikra Adon Olam, B'yado, Afkid Ruchi, Be'et Yishan V'ahira Adon Olam, Be'im Ruchi, Geviyati, Adonai Li V'lo Ira Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa, V'chefto Kol, Azai Malach Shemon Ikra Adon Olam. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We are going to continue in the foyer with Kiddush and Motzi. I invite you to bring your Sidurim back and hold on to them. For Kiddush, we're going to do Kiddush a little differently than we usually do because of it being this particular week. So, and those of you who are on YouTube can join us back on Zoom, and we will have Zoom on in the foyer as well.